Middlesbrough certainly mean business as they release their retained list going into the summer. Of course, Middlesbrough fell short in their pursuit of promotion this season, falling to a 1-0 defeat against Hull City in the playoff final. And it means for Middlesbrough, it's going to be a summer of reflection, one of rebuilding as we look to go one step further next season and secure that valuable promotion to the Premier League. Now, in doing so, Middlesbrough have got some tough decisions to make, and they certainly haven't shied away from doing so, with 9 first-team players currently set to leave the club this summer. Middlesbrough's retained list has been released on the club website. That's a list of players who are likely to be leaving the club at the end of their contracts, and Middlesbrough really not pulling any punches. So if we just go through the list of players who are set to leave, so Dan Barlaser, Marcus Force, both of those players have been out on loan this season with Hibernian and Bolton Wanderers respectively. Both their contracts up this summer, and neither of them really looking like they were going to be playing a part in Middlesbrough's plans moving forward. So not too much of a surprise there. John McLaughlin, he was brought in as Middlesbrough's third choice goalkeeper, so again he's moving on as well. Darragh Lenihan, of course, he was one of Middlesbrough's key players over the last few seasons. A really, really good defender, but just couldn't shake off those injury problems. It's a real shame for him. The hope was that this season he really could kick on. I remember seeing him last summer in the friendly against Gateshead. It was hoped that would be the first match in his road to recovery, because in my opinion, in terms of sheer ability, surely Darragh Lenihan would be one of the best defenders at the club still at this point, but we just haven't seen it, just thanks to those injuries. So Middlesbrough have clearly decided that the time's right to part ways with him. Of course, Lenihan is one of the highest earning players at the club as well, so for him to move on seems like the right thing all round. It seems like the right thing for Middlesbrough to let him go, use those funds elsewhere, can use those wages elsewhere. And for Darragh Lenihan, he can decide what he wants to do next, whether it's continuing a playing career elsewhere or whether he decides to retire and move into coaching or whatever that might sort of be. So there are a handful of the other players who are moving on. Of course, there are a couple of loan players who are leaving as well. There's a couple of players that I haven't mentioned yet that I will get on to. So in terms of loan players, of course, we've got Alan Brown, who's leaving. He'll be heading back to Sunderland. Matt Targett, he's been on loan from Newcastle United. And Joe Wildsmith as well, he's been on loan from West Brom. All of those 3 players, their loan spells have come to an end. Now, Matt Targett is out of contract this summer. He's going to leave Newcastle United. His wages at Newcastle have been extraordinary, way beyond Middlesbrough's wage budget. So it remains to be seen whether Middlesbrough could be tempted to make a move for him. But I think it's probably unlikely based on the sheer numbers that are likely to be involved in bringing Matt Targett back to the club. Alan Brown, heading back to the Stadium of Light. A report from the Northern Echo earlier on today has suggested that Middlesbrough could be tempted to try and sign him on a permanent basis. He's obviously played a key role under Kim Hellberg and also under Rob Edwards previous to that, and you'd think that Sunderland would be open to doing a deal for him, particularly given that they've just qualified for the Europa League, and the sheer quality and quantity of players really that they've got in that position. You'd imagine that his future would be away from Sunderland, and personally I think I'd be very, very up for Middlesbrough trying to sign him. He featured in 38 of Borough's 46 Championship games, starting 26 of them. He also featured in the playoff final, so definitely a player who could add real quality and real experience to Middlesbrough's team if we were to sign him over the course of this summer. But of course, it would have to be the right deal for Middlesbrough. 2 of the other more interesting players in the list, a few of them I've mentioned are they're always going to be dead certs to leave this summer. But Darragh Lenihan, not Darragh Lenihan, Sammy Silvera and Alex Gilbert, 2 players who currently are going to be set to leave the club at the moment. Now, they, as it stands at the moment, they haven't signed new deals. They're coming to the end of their contracts. And so as it stands at the moment, they are part of the released list from Middlesbrough, 2 players who will be moving on this summer. Now, Middlesbrough, according to the Northern Echo and Dom Shaw, they are both in talks with the club over extending their contracts at the club. Now, this is going to be an interesting one to see how this plays out. Both of these players have featured semi-regularly for Middlesbrough over the course of this season. Sammy Silvera quite prominent under Rob Edwards. He's played a little bit under Kim Hellberg as well. Alex Gilbert didn't really play a lot under Rob Edwards, but under Kim Hellberg has been a really valuable squad player, someone who's been used in central midfield when things have been really, really tight in games when our numbers, particularly with like Hayden Hackney being injured or Alan Brown, he's come in and he's been trusted by Kim Hellberg as a ball playing central midfielder. You remember those matches against Hull City and against Charlton where he was excellent. He had a real resurgence considering that it looked like his Middlesbrough career was over, but he came back, did really, really good for us in those games and looked like he might be about to rebuild his career. Now, as a result of that, and for Silvera as well, both of those players are being discussed over in terms of new contracts. They are being offered new deals. There are discussions going on, but of course those talks will hinge on whether those players are going to be playing regular first team football. Of course, they're going to want to play regular first team football. The question mark will be whether that's going to be on offer under Kim Hellberg. They've already been bit part players, and you'd imagine that given the amount of overhaul that's going to be going on this summer in Middlesbrough's first team squad, those opportunities could be even more limited going into next season. So, of course, there's going to be some conversations to be had there. Middlesbrough probably having to do a little bit of expectation management with those two players, saying, look, you're welcome to stay. We really value you. You'll be really good, solid squad players. But at the same time, you are not likely to get a huge amount of football. And so, of course, those two players will have decisions to make. So it does seem that it's quite likely that those two players will move on, heading on to pastures new. And it'll be interesting to see how they get on. Silvera had struggled before this season, but he did really take his opportunity in pre-season under Rob Edwards. Did really well playing as a wing-back primarily. Under Edwards, and then he put in a couple of decent performances under Kim Hellberg as well before he got injured. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up if he does eventually move on, and Gilbert as well. We haven't seen enough of him on a regular enough basis, but he is a very good player. Whether he ends up in the Championship or ends up in League One remains to be seen, really. But the other good news for Middlesbrough coming out of this retained list, probably the headline news is with regards to Dale Fry, and that's because Middlesbrough have confirmed that they're in talks with Dale Fry over extending his contract. Now, of course, Dale Fry captained Middlesbrough at Wembley. He's been a real standout player for many, many years. He came through the club's academy. He really is the sort of beating heart of this Middlesbrough team. And so it always seemed a bit odd that his contract hadn't been extended up until the end of the season. Of course, he's had a few injury problems and that sort of thing. But it did seem a little bit odd that deal hadn't been extended. Now, according to that report from the Northern Echo, it was suggested that while his contract was expiring this summer, had Middlesbrough got promoted, there was an automatic extension that was included in that. So that would have extended his deal into next summer. Now, of course, Middlesbrough didn't get promoted, so that clause wasn't triggered. But Middlesbrough are still looking to extend that deal, and still looking to extend his contract. And it's widely expected that Dale Fry will extend his contract because he's been a really, really important part of Middlesbrough's team over recent years, but also under Kim Hellberg. Kim Hellberg has been waxing lyrical about Dale Fry. Really is a real leader in that backline, and I think if Middlesbrough are going to go on and kick on next season, try and secure promotion, I think Dale Fry would have a massive role to play as long as he can stay fit. So that's really good news. It's yet to be confirmed. It's yet to be confirmed that he's signed that new deal, but talks are underway, and given that he's a Middlesbrough fan and just how much the club means to him, it will be a real surprise if that one didn't get done. Of course, the other piece of news which has come out during this release from Middlesbrough is with regards to Jeremy Sarmiento. It's not new news because a lot of fans were already aware of it, and that's that his loan deal at the club is set to become permanent this summer. There was an obligation in that loan deal from Brighton and Hove Albion to make the move permanent this summer. So as soon as the new season starts in June, as soon as that loan deal comes to an end, that'll be triggered. Jeremy Sarmiento will become a permanent member of Middlesbrough's squad, and it's been a frustrating time for him so far. But he is a quality player. We have seen it previously. He came in, he hadn't played a huge amount of football before he came to the Riverside, but you'd imagine that this pre-season will be absolutely massive for him. He really needs to kick on, show what he's capable of, show Kim Hellberg what he's capable of, but then also show supporters what he's about, because a lot of fans are a little bit unsure about him, becoming quite disappointed with his performances since he came into the club. And so you'd imagine that it will be a big summer and a big start to next season for him if he is to win over Middlesbrough supporters. So I want to know from you. Of course, there's a lot of players' futures have been decided there. As I said, 9 players who could potentially be moving on this summer with contracts expiring and talks underway over new deals. So I want to hear from you. Are you happy to see these players leave the club? Drop into the comments below. Let me know your thoughts. And if you have enjoyed this video, please do hit like, please do hit subscribe as well. And I will catch up with you next time.